There we go. Jason Aldean, they're going to know we're here. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to today's edition of our AM Minnesota program. We have in studio Todd Sesker today. Tomorrow we'll be visiting with Julie Fox. She wanted me to inform you, because I didn't inform you of this earlier, that she does have a co-chair for her Thanksgiving event, Laura McCauley. So I apologize to Laura, because memory of mine is fading as I get older. I do recall Laura was the co-chair the last couple of years, so sorry about that, Laura. She couldn't be with us tomorrow. Julie will be joined by Jim Pago, I think, who's been involved in this for many, 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 many years, just like yours truly. So we're looking forward to it. The community Thanksgiving dinner. We'll get all the details on how you can assist the folks in preparing this terrific meal next Thursday. I know, well, many years I've been peeling potatoes, but in recent years, since my folks have both been gone, I have delivered meals as well. It's really just a neat way to celebrate the holiday in a whole different way. Todd.
Yeah, it's coming right up. The holidays are right around the corner, and hope everybody has a great break and a great Thanksgiving.
But you wanted to talk a little bit today about emergency calls, about snow, and frankly, I don't really want to talk about snow.
Yeah, sorry about that. I'm putting everybody in a bad mood on such a great day.
No, it's okay.
I did want to talk a little bit about the winter weather,
sure,
our process, and what to listen to and to follow in case we do have a school closing or a late start or an early out. But when we have these calls that we're trying to make, we take them very seriously. We want to try to have school as much as possible. Getting a little feedback here. And the process that we go through is we'll get up somewhere between 4:30 and 5 o'clock in the morning, and Kevin Hildebrand, our director of grounds, will be out and about, and we talk to Garrett Regan, our transportation director, down at the bus garage, and we'll send 3 or 4 folks out into the country roads to check the roads out. I'm kind of at the home base with my cell phone waiting for their call, and while they're inspecting roads, I call different superintendents around the area, mainly Northfield because they're our closest neighbors, and we chat about the conditions, and we look at the radars to see what's coming up, and then I get back to Garrett and to Kevin, and they've done this for a long time now, and they've got some great expertise on the road conditions. And then we all come together with a decision. We don't always necessarily agree with what the neighboring towns do, but we certainly, if we can do what they're doing, we try to work together as much as possible, because if it's bad in one area, normally it's pretty bad in another area.
You know, I did want to ask you a question. It's probably not fair because we're at a little over a minute, but either you can answer it now or contemplate on it, and then after the break we'll discuss it some more. Because you bring up an interesting point about calling neighbors and whatnot. Years ago, State Representative Peter Radosevich, so we're talking back in the early 90s, had a meeting of school superintendents from Rice County, which would be at the time it was not Montgomery, well maybe it was Montgomery, Lonsdale, Faribault, Northfield, I think were the 3 districts. He came up with an idea, back when I was a kid, way back in the ancient ages, when we, wore different clothing, puka shell necklaces, flare pants, that sort of thing. Way back when we had county superintendents, back when I was a kid. And he said, that's what we need to do, go back to county school districts, basically, and county superintendents. What are your thoughts on that?
Sure, I'll think about it when we get back. I know you're going to come back. I'll give you a
You're going to contemplate that, because I thought at the time it made some sense. You have one person in each county that would oversee the schools in the county, and each county basically would be a school district.
Yep.
So we're going to talk about that when AM Minnesota continues. I just, for some reason, that came to my head when you were talking.
Yep.
And so we'll talk about that. We'll get more information about the emergency call list, and I want to go across some numbers here. I did a little checking before the program today, because I saw the goals of the Faribault Public School District. One of them is to increase the graduation rate.
It is.
And we're going to check and see if that's been accomplished too, as we visit with Superintendent Todd Sesker Buildings for quality post-frame construction. Visit them on their website, northlandbuildings.com. Todd Sesker is the superintendent of the Faribault Public Schools. He is with us today on AM Minnesota. Tomorrow we'll be visiting with Julie Fox and Jim Pago about the Community Thanksgiving Dinner. Julie and Laura McCauley are the co-chairs of that event. It's a terrific event. I'm glad they picked up the ball and was, you know, kind of being juggled a little bit there for a couple of years. We'll have Mark Paddock from South Central College with us on Friday. He's in charge of their construction program, which was re-implemented here this year. We'll talk with Mark on Friday. I'm looking forward to that. In fact, Todd, I don't know, what was it, a month ago or so, they had the ribbon cutting?
Yep, for the construction class at the South
So
Central.
I stopped by and I visited with Mark then. Got some really nice facilities there.
Yeah, it's going to be an exciting program. I'm glad it's back.
Yeah, and I'm sure, you know, that's an option for a lot of your students. Not every kid's going to go to college.
Right, and it's just another pathway that we can create. We're doing a lot of collaborating with South Central College, and that's just going to be another advantage for all of us.
So we're looking forward to visiting with Mark on Friday's AM Minnesota show. You've contemplated it. What do you think?
Well,
county superintendents, like when I was a wee little lad.
Mm-hmm. Well, and like we were just talking off the air for a little while, the whole idea is not a bad idea. It's just I think the cost would be too much for local school districts to bear. One perfect example is we tried that with our special education director. We tried to share a special ed director with Northfield and Faribault. We thought it was a good idea. We saved a few bucks on that, and then 2 years later, and the director at the time did a great job with it, we found out that we're stretching her too far. We couldn't afford it. Some of the services were being missed as a result of it. So we have now decided to go back to separate directors. So now Faribault has their own special ed director, and Northfield has their own special ed director.
Of course, there you were still separate districts. This would be one school district
Right.
that would cover the entire county.
Yeah, but we'd still be two separate sites, so that person physically would have to drive from Northfield to Faribault and get that whole piece in there. Just because the structure would be all there, we'd still need the people to service those different areas because of the number of kids that we have in each of the different schools. So it would be something that you'd have to have. You have one school district that would certainly condense some of the paperwork and things like that, but you still have the responsibilities that you have at the local level. So I know a long time ago we used to have plenty of administrators to go around. We just don't have that anymore. So you would be talking about hiring administrators, and whenever you talk about hiring administrators and using people's tax money to do this, you always hit a red flag, and it's really, really difficult to add those positions back.
Okay.
So I think it's really kind of impractical at this point to talk about that, especially larger districts. Smaller districts have done it, and maybe it'll get to the point where it's financially feasible, but for us, we're at a size right now where it's really difficult to combine those.
So if we were to kick the federal government out of the equation, because we don't really need a federal Department of Education, they're gone, and you take away some of the mandates that the states put on all the school districts, this could be conceivable.
Oh, I would say if we could get rid of testing, the mandates, the federal requirements, all those different things, and make it a local piece, so it's just us making these decisions, what's best for kids, then I think we'd have a chance at it.
No, that's probably not going to happen.
That's going to be really tough to do.
Yeah. I'm living in a dream world, I know,
Yeah.
Todd. So emergency calls, obviously the only place to listen is right here, KDHL.
You bet.
Or Power 96 Radio. I mean, that's the only place to listen. John's falling asleep back here.
I know it's not the most exciting topic in the world, but keep an eye on, or make sure you update for parents that are listening out there. Make sure you update your information for the Faribault Public Schools. If you want that phone call in the morning from me, or if you want that text or email, I send that out immediately. We talk to KDHL and they put it on the air, so please listen to them.
It's on our website. You call parents, seriously? You call them?
We do a roto call, and so I put the system on a computer, and then I use my voice to record that we're canceling school.
You don't, I think you meant you individually call every parent. Whoa.
Nope, the computer gets to do that for me, and so that
That's good.
sends out. But the parents have to have their phone number in our database in order to do that. So if you don't have it in there, please call the secretaries at the school, and they will get that in there for you. The other thing I do is I tweet that out, so if you want to follow me on Twitter, feel free to do that as well.
What are you, Todd Falcon?
I'm T Sesker at Faribault. Just if you look up T Sesker, you'll find it. It'll pop up.
Oh.
I don't even know my Twitter handle.
Yeah, isn't that something?
That's terrible.
Mine's Gordy Cosmo.
There you go. So I did want to mention one other thing too, Gordy, today, getting a little bit sidetracked from the emergency closings, is the fact that Jason Ingbrett was selected to All-State School Board Chair for the Faribault Public Schools. And that's actually a very prestigious award that's given to 7 school board members every year. And Jason was selected this year, and I just want to congratulate Jason for all of his work and his accomplishments and for this award. It's a great
How do
award.
they select an all-state school board member?
They get nominations. The process is you get nominations locally, and we nominated Jason for that. And most of the school districts will nominate somebody from the school board to do that, and then the school board association will filter through those nominations. It's based on a few criteria, of course, and then based on that criteria they select who they think is deserving of the All-State Award. So
well, congratulations to Jason on that.
Yeah, and then the other thing is we have Ken Hubert was our section athletic activities director of the year, and so some good things happening in Faribault School.
But he's leaving us in January.
He is leaving us in January, and we have now found a replacement for Ken.
It's John Anderson.
It's John Anderson. Yep, congratulations,
no
John.
kidding?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yep.
John, I never thought you had it in you to be the AD of the Faribault Public Schools.
Yeah, we're going to recommend that Danny Duchesne is our next activities director. He'll be on the agenda for the next school board meeting, and we went through a very thorough process for that whole thing, and of course Ken's going to be very, very difficult to replace, and we're hoping that this new person is going to do a great job.
And is the part of the philosophy here to have a AD that's not a coach?
Yep. This activities director will be won't be coaching or directing anything. They'll be basically an administrator that's in there to help promote our activities and make sure that we get as many students out for those activities as we possibly can.
So actively recruiting students to participate in activities.
Yep. Try to. I mean, you want that to be intrinsic, so kids want to come out for activities. But that's what this gentleman's skill set is, and we believe that he's going to do a great job. He's also a Faribault native, so that's terrific. We're very happy to have Danny come back and serve our district.
Oh yeah, he was a Falcon athlete for sure.
Yeah, he was. So yeah, it was a great process. So we're looking forward to it. We had some really, really good candidates too, and so we are happy to announce that Danny's going to be our next activities director.
When does he start?
Well, we'll do some training. Ken will stick around for as long as he needs to, as long as he can tolerate not seeing his grandbabies. But he'll stick around all through January, and then probably the beginning of February, he'll be on his own.
Okay. Kind of different to have a middle of the year change, isn't it? Or is that pretty ordinary?
It's a little bit different, but when I would say during retirements, it's probably not out of the ordinary. We have teachers and administrators retire sometime in the middle of the year because that's when their rule of 90 comes up. It's probably more the norm if a person decides to move on to a different job that they wait until the end of the school year. So it's not terribly out of the ordinary. And we actually ended up with we had some outstanding candidates. Surprisingly, we had 40 applicants for the position. So it took a long time to fill.
No, I'm not surprised. An AD in the Big Nine, that's a nice position to have.
It's a great position, and the Big Nine has such a great reputation in the state, and you're right, that is true.
Yeah, 40 applicants.
40 applicants, and some really very, very qualified applicants on there, so we're very happy.
Fantastic. So I'm looking forward to working with Mr. Duchesne.
Yeah, maybe we can have him on the radio as soon as he gets on board, and
I'd love
he gets his feet wet a little bit, and you can talk about philosophy, and I'm sure he'd be more than happy to visit with you.
I would love to do that. Well, you know the numbers. The numbers don't lie. The percentage of students and their success rate when they're involved in things outside of the classroom is very high.
Oh yeah, there's a direct correlation, and there's been so much research behind that. It's silly if somebody says it doesn't have any difference, doesn't make any difference. So it does make a huge difference, and we're not just talking athletics. We're talking about activities for kids to be, and volunteering. All those different things combine to make a better, more rounded, well-rounded student that graduates from Faribault Public Schools. So we encourage kids to get involved.
Anything else on the emergency call?
No, I think those are the major ones. Just be aware of winter weather. Make sure, one thing is to note too is that the bus is always the safest place to transport. So if you're fearing the roads are too bad, put your kids on the bus. And we are going to communicate with you as much as possible, and sometimes I don't get all the agreements with the decisions that we make, but that's part of the job. That we do the best we can, and I hope people understand that we are doing what's best for kids, and we're trying to keep everybody safe, and at the same time we want to make sure that they get to school.
Recently there was talk about, wasn't there a recommendation for the first time ever to put seatbelts in school buses?
Yeah, that's been around for a little while. Again, it's a financial thing more than anything else. Well, it actually is. If you look at our buses right now, there is some argument saying that because we've increased the height of each of the seats, that they are already quite safe for kids. We do have to do those for the preschoolers, the little ones. We have to do car seats and things like that. But there's still a debate on whether or not the seatbelt is really going to make it any more safe than what the school bus already is.
Yeah. Well, I know some school bus manufacturers argue that point, say
They do.
it doesn't really make a lot of sense to put seatbelts in school buses.
Yeah, and I haven't done a lot of the data research for that. I usually depend on Garrett for his information for that, and he's very comfortable with our kids and being safe on the buses right now without the seatbelts.
You know, that topic comes up every time there's a school bus accident and you unfortunately have injuries or,
Yep.
you know,
You do.
something really serious
Yeah,
happen.
hopefully we don't have that.
You know, I was looking at your school district goals,
Mm-hmm.
your hopes, your dreams, your desires. One of them is to increase the graduation rate. So I was a bit curious about that. Is that happening? Are we
Yeah,
increasing the
we have a
graduation?
very good graduation rate. There's there's different data that you look at, just like the state does with everything. They manipulate the numbers with the data. If you look at the old way that they've done it, we have graduated consistently over 90% of our kids. So it's been terrific. If you look at the data that the state has, it's a 3-page formula. It's about
They got you at 78%.
you got 78%, right?
Okay, now I'm really perplexed. What's the difference?
So this is what we're doing for our goal to match the goal that's on there. We are going to devise a goal where we're taking the kids that we get as freshmen.
But
Mhm.
before we go there, Todd, how do you have 90+% and they have 78%? Seems like a simple thing. Either you graduate or you don't.
Yeah, what we've done before is we take the seniors that enroll at the beginning of the school year, and then at the end of the school year, we see how many of those seniors graduate.
Oh, and they go from the time they start school.
Right. So the formula that they're using, the state uses to get that 78%, they're taking into account kids who transfer in and transfer out, and whether they've graduated at another school. It just doesn't make any sense. It's
Okay.
a long 2-page formula that they derive the 78%. They're trying to make consistent so they get every single student, regardless of what school they go to. So
well, you get that through your method too, though.
Well, sort of, except for we start our senior year. What they start with their formula is they start at the 9th grade level. So we could lose 5 kids, or we can gain 5 kids.
Yeah, but they go somewhere else and graduate.
Yep.
Possibly, or not, and you want to count them if they don't too. That's what we're trying to determine here.
Right, but we don't count that in our 90% numbers, and that's why the state doesn't recognize that anymore.
Oh.
So,
okay. So
well,
these numbers I see are.
They're state numbers. That's what the state determines, and I gotta apologize to you. It's a really long formula.
No, that's
that we
okay.
determine that.
But these rates are, none of them are good in my opinion.
Right.
The USA rate is 82.2% of kids graduate from high school in America. This
Right.
is the United States of America. 82.2%. That seems very low to me. But they must be using this formula.
Well, that is, and that's probably pretty accurate when you use that whole thing. I want to remind folks too that back in the 60s and 70s it's right around 60%.
Right.
So it's increased dramatically since then. But I just want to tell you what we're doing so we have an idea of what makes a little bit more sense for us. Because we want to make sure that the kids who start their freshman year, and we want all kids to graduate, there's no doubt about that.
Of course, that's the goal.
But to measure a goal that's consistent so that we think we can do an apples to apples, we're going to take the kids that we have our freshman year, and this is our cohort that we're going to measure to determine what our goal will be to increase our graduation rate. So when we get them, we believe that if we get them in 9th grade, we can get them to graduate. So that cohort of kids, so if a kid leaves their sophomore or junior year, we no longer count them. So our total becomes smaller. Likewise, if we have kids that come in from a different school district their junior year that may not have some good credentials, or they may have dropped out of another school, we don't count them. We only count the kids freshman year through the senior year. And our goal is to count those kids all the way through the 4 years, just that cohort. And remember, we're still trying to graduate everybody. But for our measure, we're using that cohort through the 4 years, and then we're going to measure how many of those kids, if we keep them for 4 years, how many of those kids graduate. And if we can get to 100%, then we think that we've accomplished our goal. And we think we can get there. We have very little control over the kids who come into our school their junior year. That's the hard part. That junior may not have credits from a previous school. They may have dropped out from a previous school. And so if once they enter our school, if they drop out 2 months later, we don't think that that's fair. And that measures our data accurately. So the only thing we can depend on is that cohort that we start with our freshman. We could go back to 7th or 8th grade or whatever too, but we thought that 9th grade would be a good measure for our school.
Yeah. Well, the Minnesota number is 83.9%.
Right. That's still low overall, I think. Keep in mind that a lot of that Minnesota is urban, and the urban traditionally has a lower graduation rate than a lot of the outlying school districts.
Northfield's is 91%.
Right.
Owatonna's 85%, Austin's 84.1%, Albert Lee's 88%, Mankato's 81.2%, Rochester's 83%.
Yeah. The other thing is, too, to keep in mind that it also doesn't measure. We have 3 tracks for those kids who drop out of school. This is not measured, and we do a very, very good job with this. We have an alternative learning center where those kids can also attend. So if they don't graduate when they're ready, because the tradition is that they have to they graduate at 18, but maybe they're not ready to graduate. So they can graduate once they're 21. And a lot of those kids who don't graduate that senior year will go to our alternative learning center and graduate when they're 19, 20, or 21. If they drop out, we have a terrific adult basic ed program. We now have expanded that to give a credentialed Faribault Public School diploma.
Not a GED.
Not a GED, and that was just adopted last year. The board adopted that, so that's a lane, and Jessica Lewis runs that program, does a great job. And then we have our traditional GED program too, that those kids can get their GED. Of course, we want them to get a diploma because it's just it's a better piece to put on your resume. A GED is not bad, but the diploma is a better piece.
Right.
So we have a lot of avenues for these kids. So I would wonder, by the time of age 21, I wonder how many of those freshmen who started high school as a freshman really do graduate. And I would say that number's higher than what that is. They're just not. Some are not ready by the time they're 18.
So by those numbers, Faribault will be one of the lower in the area, graduation rate.
Yep.
And what I'm wondering is why that is, because Faribault has the best student-to-teacher ratio of any of these schools I just said.
Now it does.
Faribault spends more money per student than any of the schools I just read.
Yep, this first year. Yep, first time in probably 20 years that Faribault spends more money per student. So give us 4 years, and then hopefully that'll help out.
Okay.
Yep, give us a few years, and we want that graduation rate to increase. There's no doubt about that. That's one of our primary goals.
But what I think is maybe the biggest contributing factor, I'm curious to hear what you say about this, is that 57% of students in our district are eligible for free and reduced lunch, by far the highest percentage among all those schools.
It is, and remember our elementary schools are at 70%.
The socio-economic factor.
Yeah, there's a definite relationship.
A lot of these kids probably drop out of school because it's so tough at home. They need to get a job to help supplement the income at home.
And that's the reason why they go to the Alternative Learning Center for us. And that people don't see that piece, and they may not be ready to graduate when they're 18 because they've been helping mom and dad at home to make ends meet.
Right.
But they can go to night school. They can't get all 16 credits or whatever the credits we use to get to that graduation piece for that semester, so they have to go another half a year or a year to get that. And Margaret Garrett does a great job of corralling those kids in there and getting them to graduate. But they may not be 18. They might be 19 or 20 by the time they get done.
Remember, Faribault's 57%, Owatonna's 41%, Northfield 27% of their students are eligible for free or reduced lunch. Mankato is 37%. Albert Lee is 51%. Rochester is 37%.
Yep. Yeah, and we don't want, it's facts. We don't want to make that an excuse for us because we still want to make sure that we increase those numbers.
But when I look at all the numbers,
you're right.
There's a correlation between graduation rate and this particular number.
There's also a correlation with test scores.
Oh, yeah. For sure. Yeah, Faribault, let's see, where are we at here?
But we also have some of the highest achieving kids. I think that's the difficulty to understand, that we got an average in there, but we have some of the highest achieving students in the state of Minnesota too. We've got some excellent students and we've got extra curriculum. I want to make sure that we understand that dichotomy is out there, but averages are just averages, because we have, Jason Boggs is a perfect example of, he's a nominee for the All-State Chemistry Teacher Award. So we got some outstanding teachers in there, and we're producing a pretty good product of kids that are coming out of our schools.
What's the average tenure? We have a high tenure district still. We used to, I know.
We did, but we hired over the last 2 years 135 new teachers. So we have a lot of young teachers on staff right now. We have some very good veteran teachers. Last year was probably the largest retirement of veteran teachers that I've seen anywhere in a long time. Over 300 years of experience that had graduated, or that left as tenured teachers.
For those who are into statistics, I'm really into numbers. I just enjoy statistics. expenditure per student in the Faribault schools is $11,813 according to the state.
Yep.
The national average is $11,927. So we're just under average. Every district in the Big Nine is under the national average.
Right, right. And again, if you take a look at that free and reduced, we have kids, like it or not, kids are a little bit more expensive to educate in our school system. We do get some revenue from the state for that purpose, and it just makes sense that you have that. We also have a higher special education population, mainly because we're in the county seat,
Yep.
and we get more special education aid as a result, which is a good thing. We get more aid for that thing, but because
that
we have
goes
that
into that
population,
cost per student.
it does. It
so
all
it's
goes
not.
in.
We're not talking necessarily that our local taxpayers are paying more than everybody else. This factors into all the different funds.
All the federal funds,
Cost
all the
per
state
student.
funds, yeah. In fact, the state and the federal funds combined are about 85% of our funding. The local taxes are very, very minimal.
And we're talking, within a couple $100 of each other, folks. For example, Northfield's cost is $11,705 per student, and we're at $11,813, so a little over $100. And they have a 17-to-1 student-to-teacher ratio, where Faribault's at 15-to-1.
And what's their poverty rate compared to Faribault's?
Well, that's what I mean. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
That's
So
27% on the free and reduced versus 57%.
So I think we're doing a pretty good job with what we have for our tools, and I think we've been pretty responsible with our funding. And again, over the years, Colleen Murdestorff's done a great job with that whole financial piece.
Ortona,
Yep.
17-to-1 student-to-teacher ratio. Mankato, 16-to-1 student-to-teacher ratio. Albert Lee, 14-to-1. Did I not write down the Rochester one? I didn't. Silly me.
Yeah, and Rochester just passed a big levy, so I'm sure those numbers are going to go down too.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Austin's getting a dome, by the way.
They are, over their football field. That'll be interesting. Be similar to the RCTC dome.
And I know that's kind of one of your dreams, right? We're going to get a dome, get rid of that goose gunk.
It would be terrific. As long as we can figure out how to put the stadium under the dome, that would be ideal.
Well, that's what they're doing in Austin.
Are they getting the whole stadium under there?
Well, the field. I don't know about the bleachers part.
Yeah, I don't know how that works either, so.
Interesting.
Yeah, it is interesting.
Thanks, Todd, for coming in.
Yeah, thank you, Gordy. Appreciate it, as always, Todd.
And you don't mind. Folks, I did not tell him I was going to delve into all these numbers.
That's okay. I enjoy a little bit of stats, and
all this was off the top of my bald head and your.
Yep.
Your head.
Well, hopefully I can answer all those questions.
Yeah. Well, that concludes today's edition of AM Minnesota.